So the last two sessions, we have done about two topics. One is self-awareness and the other is self-regulation. Yeah. So we are trying to understand emotional intelligence through the lens of Gita. So that is the main theme of these 4 series session. So today we are doing the third session, that is peer pressure to peer pleasure. So it has something to do with relationships. And I would like to have a quick recap of what we have learned the first 2 weeks because it's going in a flow and they are interconnected. So in session 1, it is called Getting to Know the Real You. The session 2 is about regulation, the road to empowerment. We have finished these 2 sessions. Session 3 is from peer pressure to peer pleasure. That's what we're going to do today. And the next session would be the secret key to lasting relationships. So during the first session, that is in getting in touch with the real you, we have learned something in detail about self-awareness. Yeah. So in self-awareness, we have learned 3 major aspects. One is about emotional self-awareness, that is getting in touch with our emotions. The second aspect we have learned about accurate self-assessment, which talks about knowing our strengths and weaknesses. And third is how these 2 aspects lead to self-confidence. So we have tried to analyze these 3 subheadings under self-awareness. And we also tried to see it from the Gita perspective. Yeah, Bhagavad-gita as such, it gives a holistic perspective or understanding of any subject matter. So we have tried to learn self-awareness from the Gita perspective. And what did we learn? Gita says that the self, what is the real self? Yeah, the real self or the Atman is the 5 aspects. That is the body, the mind, the intelligence, the soul, and the super soul. These 5 together are the self. So until now, self-awareness at an emotional intelligence platform is probably, just the body and mind. But self from the Gita perspective is complete whole. It's just not the body and mind, but it's also the intelligence, the self, and the super self, the super soul as well. And then we have also seen the hierarchy of the self, and which is the next slide. Yeah, the hierarchy of gross and subtle bodies, based on the verse of Gita, which speaks about Indriyanir Paranyahur Indriyebhyo Param Manaha. Yeah, that is how the mind is superior to senses, and intelligence is much more superior than the mind. And superior to the intelligence is the self, the Atma. And we have seen it from the example of the chariot of the body. Yeah, so here we have established that intelligence is superior to mind. So this is what exactly is emotional intelligence. So emotional intelligence is the ability of intelligence to monitor, regulate, and to express emotions in more constructive ways. This exactly is what is emotional intelligence. And then in the next session, that is in the last week's session, we have learned something about self-regulation. Next slide. Yeah, so in self-regulation, we have also seen about how one can, regulate oneself by changing one's tab, that is thinking, attitude, and behavior. We have learned about the importance of self-regulation. In fact, there are many, multiple verses in Bhagavad-gita which speak about self-regulation. Yeah, as self-regulation as a means to attain the mercy of the Lord. Yeah, Raga Dvesha Nittayaschu Indriya. Next verse, next slide. Yeah. So this is one verse in Bhagavad Gita which speaks about what exactly is the self-regulation, yeah, and how it is attained. Very important verse. As such, what is self-regulation? I'll just tell you with a small analogy. Self-regulation is like building a dam. Why is it like building a dam? When a dam is built, what happens? There is a massive flow of water. If that flow is left unchecked, what can this massive flow of water can do? It can just simply unleash into the many fields, destroy the fields, the cattle, and the village, the surroundings, and all the systems over there. Yeah, that is what an unchecked flow of a current of water can do. But if you build a dam, that very same current of water can be controlled, and it can be directed in ways that it can actually fertilize more and more amount of soil in the surroundings. It can be very productive. So is it with self-regulation. Self-regulation is like building a dam onto our flow of thoughts and flow of our emotions. So when you build a dam, what happens? That very same emotions, which have massive power, massive strength, can actually be directed into constructive purposes. So that's why self-regulation is like building a dam. So because mind it has such massive power. It is said that in a day, a person thinks about at least 10,000 thoughts. In a minute, a person thinks in 7 different directions, in 7 different ways. It's like the vectors pulling, the single entity called mind in 7 different directions. So that is why self-regulation is something that makes you get focused and actually synergized your mental capacities and abilities into a single pointed focus to bring about massive energy and power. So that is self-regulation. It's a very powerful process. So what Gita says, how Gita completes the understanding of self-regulation is through this verse. Tani sarvani samyamya yukta asita matpara. Yeah. Show that verse. Yeah. Tani sarvani samyamya yukta asita matpara vashehi yasyendriyani tasya prajna pratishtita. So what does this verse say? One who restrains his senses, keeping them under full control and fixes his consciousness upon me, is a man of steady intelligence. This is the secret that Gita reveals. So you speak so much about self-regulation, but let me ask you one question. So many times you have made New Year resolutions. How many times could you fulfill those resolutions? Could you keep up those resolutions? Yeah, so many times we really want to regulate ourselves, but how many times we have failed? And if we've lost balance and we are all over the place. Why does this happen time and again? Because the intelligence is not fixed. And here is Gita giving us the key, how to be fixed in intelligence. The key ingredient is matpara. Krishna is telling matpara, yukta asita matpara. Matpara means fix your consciousness on me. So this is the process of yoga. When you fix your consciousness on the Supreme, the higher self, the super soul, Krishna himself, that's when tasya prajna pratishtita. Prajna means intelligence. Pratishtita means it becomes fixed. So this is how, intelligence becomes fixed in a person by focusing on the higher self, that is Lord Krishna himself. So that's how Gita gives a complete and holistic understanding. So let's move on to the next topic for today, topic of social awareness. From peer pressure to peer pleasure. Quite a contradictory statement. So how do we go through this journey? That's the topic of the day today. So what is social awareness? Let's try to define social awareness. So last 2 sessions, we were trying to focus inward, right? Self-awareness and self-regulation is the internal homework we were focusing on. Now, from these 2 sessions, we'll focus on looking outward. So if self-awareness is about looking inward, social awareness is about looking outward. With your self-awareness. It's not just about merely looking outward, but with the awareness that you have developed within, you're trying to project that outward. That is what is social awareness. So we will try to learn about this concept with many practical day-to-day examples and also with some powerful examples from the scriptures. And we'll also finally see the Gita perspective on this topic. So in social awareness as such is a very, vast topic. It's difficult to cover that in one session. But I've just chosen one subtopic that will be relevant to you, that is peer pressure. So social awareness can cover many subject matters like interpersonal relationships, relationships within your workplace, and how you interact and how it will affect your decision making, etc., etc. It's a huge topic, but I have just confined it to handling peer pressure for this topic, for this session. So let's get into what is peer pressure. So by the way, peer pressure is, it's some kind of a compulsion for confirmation. We have to, somehow we want to fit into a particular social situation because of which we are pressurized to do things or behave in certain ways or say some things just to fit into the norm. And by the way, peer pressure is not just meant for adolescents or teenagers. It is experienced at all phases of life. Children experience peer pressure. Adolescents or teenagers experience peer pressure. Adults also experience peer pressure. Yeah, you can relate to some examples. Like, for example, children. For children, what is a peer pressure? Like my small daughter, she comes home and she says, "Mommy, my friends bring nice snacks. They bring nice laddus and all. You're only giving me dates. Give me something nice." So this is peer pressure for a small child. Yeah. So as adolescents and teenagers, you experience the pressure in different ways. Probably the way you want to dress, or the way you want to speak, or the way you want to have the color of your mobile. That can be impacted by peer pressure. Yeah. And of course, even as adults do experience peer pressure. If you just go and witness some marriage and try to develop some social awareness over there, what's happening around, you will really understand what is peer pressure in adult life is. People try to wear different kind of, ornaments, jewelry, and internally going through a lot of thought processes. Yeah, next time I have to wear better ones, or I have to drive in a better car, or I should wear a better sari, or that sari is better than mine. That color is something I never had. No, this is adult peer pressure. it's more complex. Yeah. So basically, peer pressure is felt at every age. Yeah. So yeah. So there are different types of peer pressure. Peer pressure has also been classified by different psychologists. Let's see what the classification is. So there is spoken peer pressure and there is unspoken peer pressure. What is spoken peer pressure? Spoken is, it's direct. An individual or a group, they keep telling you, to participate in a particular type of behavior. It's very direct. They speak to you about it. Yeah, the message is conveyed to you in words. Like, for example, you're sitting quiet, but then they want you to participate in some discussion, though you're not really willing to or wanting to. Yeah, that's a spoken peer pressure. Another example for this is probably trying to push you to come out with them for a movie or an outing or a holiday, or worse than that is to get into drinking. Sometimes people who have some experience of staying in hostels or maybe in colleges as well, there is some pressure to do things that are internally felt as wrong, but you're forced to by the constant pressure, verbally, by friends or anybody around. Yeah? So this is spoken peer pressure. And there is something called unspoken. So what is unspoken peer pressure? It's not verbally conveyed, but then you feel it because of your surroundings, because of how people behave or act or the kind of ambience that's around. You feel a kind of pressure to conform to the surroundings. Like, for example, At college, it's the traditional dress day, and you wear something really out of the place. You feel very, somebody feels very uncomfortable, yeah, because there is a need to conform to the surroundings. Or generally everybody wears blue jeans and a black t-shirt. Happiest thing, no botheration, yeah, about how people look at you. Why? That's again conformity to the peers. Or even other examples of unspoken peer pressure include, way of speaking. People staying in a particular place, they catch up with some language, some slang, or some, especially if you're working in corporates, there's something called a corporate lingo. If somebody chats with you, and if that person has a good standing in the software or corporate culture, you can easily make out by the way they speak. And if somebody is in the management field, their language is totally different. It's all about speaking the language sometimes. Yeah. So that's again unspoken peer pressure. And then and there is also the kind of the way you deal with teachers, the way you deal with elders. So that's also caught as a matter of an unspoken peer pressure. If all of students are very respectful to the teacher, which hardly happens these days, you naturally follow that norm. And if they're really playing pranks, pulling the teachers down, or speaking funnily about them, you have a tendency to actually get into that mode, and you also speak something wrong about them just to fit into that mold. Yeah, just to be socially acceptable. So this is unspoken peer pressure. Yeah, not directly conveyed to you, but you just catch it because of you being present in that social circumstance. That's unspoken. Then there's further classification of peer pressure. So peer pressure need not always be negative. Peer pressure can also be positive. Yeah, for example, what is positive peer pressure? Positive peer pressure means it yields positive results and a healthier lifestyle choice. This is the result of a positive peer pressure. That means, for example, you're in a group or you're associated with a person who's really health conscious. They take care of their diet, they take care of their lifestyle, their timetable very meticulously, or they have a routine, a fixed routine that they follow. They have a healthy diet that they never deviate from, no matter what you offer them. Yeah, you give them the most delicious of some fried items, or the most delicious of the sugary sweet chocolate tarts. They don't get deviated. They are fixed in what they want to eat. They just want to eat fresh fruits and vegetables. So this is very powerful, positive peer pressure. Yeah, brings in a lot of good to oneself. Yeah, it elevates us. Positive peer pressure elevates us. Or you have a friend who's really good at studies and they're really focused about their career and they work hard, yeah, to get results in their career. Yeah, they're very goal oriented in their studies and meticulous in their work. So that's again very positive peer pressure, because in their association you really take up your studies more seriously. Yeah, and there is another example, like if you have people who are constantly working on themselves for self-development or for their own personal upliftment, and or they have a very positive outlook towards spirituality, and they're also working in those lines. If that is the group that you're in, the overall effect of such peers is very good. It's a positive pressure. Pressure needn't always be negative. It can yield positive results as well. Like just like right now, all of you have come together for a positive purpose of learning. And so whatever you're feeling the pressure to do the right thing, think the right way, etc., that's all positive peer pressure. Helps you very much. And there is, again, there is negative peer pressure. Yeah, what is negative peer pressure? This is the kind of pressure that makes you yield to the pressure of people around you and behave in ways that you're not convinced about, and behaved in ways that leads to risky behaviors. with which at a later date one looks back and regrets. This is negative peer pressure. So negative peer pressure, I'm sure all of us know, it comes and brings the devil out of us. Positive peer pressure brings the angel out of us, while the negative peer pressure brings the demon out of us. So this can get people into doing very awkward things like drug abuse, sexual misconduct or inappropriate behavior with opposite sex, or even watching nonsensical stuff, or even things like disrespecting elders, and many such wrong attitudes like postponement, even something like postponement, keeping studies on the lighter note. I remember I had a friend who was just influenced by another friend of hers, because that other friend doesn't study much. She wanted to study, and she used to call up the other friend and ask, "What are you doing?" Says, "I'm just watching a movie." So this girl used to close her book and she also used to watch movie. So this is typical example of negative peer pressure. Yeah. So we all have had our own experiences. Even me, of all these kind of pressures in our life: the positive, the negative, the spoken, the unspoken. Yeah. So let us try to understand what can be the impact of peer pressure or being influenced by somebody. So we will search for some examples in the Shastras, and we will do some case studies in real life. Yeah. So impact of peer pressure. So as I said, peers needn't necessarily just be the friends around us. They can be anybody around us. Yeah, who's trying to come to us, counsel us, or talk to us, or advise us. All these come under peers. So one classical example of what negative peer pressure has done is the episode of Manthara poisoning the ears of Kaikeyi. Yeah. So this is a classical example. What impact the pressure of a person can do to a person. Yeah. So this was the time when Ayodhya was in a mood of great celebration, the celebration that occurred almost 2.5 decades after. The first celebration being the birth of the 4 sons, Rama, Lakshmana, Shatrughna, and Bharata. They were born. That's when Ayodhya witnessed the highest pomp and celebration. And again, 25 years of that, there was a huge celebration that set forth. So when this huge celebration set forth, everybody was happy. The whole city of Ayodhya was in great mood of celebration. Yeah. And it was sometime during the late evening, it was almost the night. And after Ram has been announced as the king, the prince regent, people from all over the world have come to witness this great coronation ceremony. So when they have come from all over the world to witness this coronation ceremony, there was great celebration. Everybody was dancing in joy, rejoicing. Yeah, rejoicing more than any happy event that was happening in their own life. This is Ayodhya Vasis. This was the Rama Rajya. That was how much everybody loved Lord Ram so dearly. And everybody was eager to just catch one glimpse of Ram. And the whole city was so much lit up that it was looking like morning. And if people were not to look at the lanterns that were on the either side of the street, they would have mistaken it to be daylight itself. That was how bright and brilliant the whole city was lit up. And after that, as Ram was announced as the next king, so as this whole celebration was going on in the city, as I said, everybody was happy except one person. And who's that one person? That was, any guess? Who's that one person who was unhappy? Or rather perplexed?
Mantra.
Yes. So it was Manthara. So everybody was joyous, but Manthara was perplexed. First, she didn't know what's happening. why so much of celebration? She was just looking at the whole thing with a bird eye view from the terrace of Kaikeyi, her mistress. So when she didn't understand what was happening, she called one of the maid and she asked, what happened? What's the reason for all this celebration? So that maid says, don't you know, Ram has been announced the king and tomorrow is his coronation. That's why everybody is celebrating. So with that news, Manthara becomes, her heart actually blazes with envy and anger and a lot of negativity. So she starts, then she again looks in and she sees that, Kaushalya is a very happy queen. She's giving a lot of charity in a very confident way. Then she makes sense out of all the celebration that has been going on. She thinks, now I understand what's happening. And then she walks down. Yeah, she walks down the stairs. And there she sees Kaikeyi just sleeping on her bed, not aware of what's happening in the city. So Manthara goes and she rudely wakes her up. You feel foolish queen, you're sleeping so happily, but look what's happening, your doom is near. And Kaikeyi, being woken up, she asks her, what's happening? What is disturbing you? Please tell me, what can I do for you? Then Manthara starts explaining. So she says, all this while you're thinking that you're the favorite queen of Dashrath Maharaj, but no, Dashratha was just giving you sweet words, but in actions, he had shown who actually is dear to him. Actually, it is Kaushalya who is dear to him, and now he has given all the good fortune to her, and you're left in poverty. So Kaushalya was, then Kaikeyi was shaken up. I mean, see, Manthara carefully chose the words which will actually disturb her. She didn't straight away tell that Ram is going to be coronated. She first started with her weak point. Her weak point is that, she's a favorite queen of her husband, her king. So she said, all this while, this is what you're thinking, but that's not true. So Kaikeyi reacted. What happened? Then Manthara starts saying, don't you know, tomorrow Ram is going to be coronated as the king. And that would mean that, for the rest of your life, you would be like a maid and, your son would be like, all lineage of your son will be like maid servants. Your son is not going to be the king, she says. Then Kaikeyi says, she jumps up in joy. She tells that, my dear Manthara, this is the best news that you could have ever given to me in my whole life. And I don't know how to honor you. And there is no confusion. You say it is not my son, but Ram is my son, and he is going to be coronated as the king. So there is a question of any unhappiness for me. And in fact, you brought great joy to me. I'm very happy, and I want to actually award you with something very nice. And she, takes away her necklace and she gives her. So Manthara takes that necklace and then she thinks that, my words did not still impact her. So this is what happens to us many a times. Sometimes somebody wants to get us into doing wrong, some bad habits. The initial push that they give us, we resist. Our internal moral compass or the good samskaras that we have from our family, somewhere, we kind of resist. We don't give in to the wrongdoings. We don't give in to the wrong behavior, or we don't immediately change our mindset. Yeah. But this is not that. But the way Maya works is it goes deeper, just like how Manthara now spoke. Till now, Manthara gave the first, she unleashed the first ball of fire, but there was no impact from Kaikeyi. In fact, it was positive from her side. But Manthara didn't give up. She gave the next ball of fire. She started telling, you foolish queen, don't you understand what's happening? And this time she actually threw that necklace on the floor, bang, and with such hatred that actually the marble flooring had a dent because of the force which threw the necklace. And after that, what happens? Manthara starts telling her, don't you know what will happen if this were to happen? And she starts systematically poisoning her ears, giving her all reasons. This is going to be suicidal for you. It's going to be suicidal for your son and for your father also. And she gives her a systematic explanation. She says, because once Kaushalya is going to become the Rajmata, you will be deprived of any good fortune whatsoever. You won't even be able to peacefully give charity. She exactly attacks all the sensitive points of Kaushalya. Of Kaikeyi, having known her for so long. Yeah, and then she starts saying that if Bharat is to be, if Ram is to be coronated as a king, did you ever think of what will happen to the children of Bharat? There will be a lineage of all servants. And Ram is such a person that, he is very good with Lakshmana, but he might harm Bharat. In fact, he might even kill Bharat. This is to the extent she poisons her ears. And she says that, and did you ever think what will happen to your father? And she even gives, tries to tell it in a very logical way. See, now your father has, Dashrath Maharaj has announced his coronation only when Bharat is away. And why did it have to do all this in such a hurry? And you see, this is your father Ashwapati. He is, he has a lifetime rivalry with Janak Maharaj. Yeah. So if Ram is to be coronated as a king, he will not inhibit the rivalry, and Janak Maharaj will take it as an opportunity and he will attack your father Ashwapati, and your father will be killed in the process. Yeah, all these three things are going to happen. You will lose your own status as the queen, as a beloved queen of Dashrath. Your son will lose the throne and your father will die. These three things are going to happen. So these three things really strike Kaikeyi. Immediately she's, her intelligence becomes totally, the whole poison gets planted in her consciousness. And then, she gets up and says, wow, this is amazing. I have never thought of in these ways. You have just come to save me and you're my savior. And I don't see any other savior other than you right at this point of time. And she starts saying, I will give you anything that you want. Now tell me what I should do. I see no other well-wisher other than you. So this was how the very same Kaikeyi who was a few minutes back was rejoicing the coronation of Ram has now become a person who wants to actually, now then, Manthara says, you have to tell Dashrath Maharaj to coronate Bharat and banish Ram to the forest for 14 years. And she was very convinced about it. Now Kaikeyi is like, now I have to do this by one method or by more methods. Yeah, she totally yields to Manthara and says, I will do whatever you say. So this was the effect of peer pressure. The same Kaikeyi who was so innocent and who was like treating Ram. In fact, she loved Ram more than her own son, and Ram treated her more than her own. Treated her as a mother more than his own mother. That was the relationship they shared. And what did it become in just few minutes of poisoning, few minutes of pressure, peer pressure, a negative peer pressure? Whole thing transformed. It was a disaster. The whole destiny of Ayodhya has changed. Yeah, and for Dashrath Maharaj, it was a catastrophe. And it was like, and by the way, I cannot go into the details of the whole Ramayana, but this particular incident is a turning point in the entire Ramayana. The whole fate of Ayodhya has changed. Yeah, and the Kaikeyi, she has never seen happiness after this ever again. Dashrath Maharaj had to leave his body. So much of ill fate, misfortune, she just invited just by, unconditionally yielding to the peer pressure of Manthara. So this is the impact that peer pressure can have on a person. It seeps in very inconspicuously, but it can have a very massive impact that can be catastrophic. So, so this is a very important example, because in our life, we deal with so many people and we have, so many people and we do have friends. And many times we cannot or may not discriminate what their intentions are, and they are guised as our well-wishers. And they come and impact our consciousness in ways that are not really positive. And the result of it is, here in this case of Ayodhya and in the case of Kaikeyi, the impact was immediate, what they have seen. But in our own lives, it might be immediate, or it might be over a period of time, we tend to see the results. It might be very systematic, happening over a period of time. So we have to be really conscious and cautious about what's affecting us, what's impacting us. Then, so next, let's go to the next aspect of how to deal with this peer pressure. So now we are understanding that what effect, what impact peer pressure can have on us, especially if it's a negative one. We should also be equipped about how to deal with it in an effective way. Yeah. So these are some practical ways of dealing with peer pressure. One is by awareness and one is through communication. So awareness again is also of two types, having emotional awareness and social awareness. So emotional awareness means to be aware of our own emotions, about like how we are getting yielded, or how we are being aware of how we are getting influenced, by a particular ambience or by a particular person, to be in touch with our own emotion. So that is why self-awareness is the step one for every kind of management of self-management. So first thing is to be emotionally aware. And second is to develop social awareness. Social awareness means to have an understanding of what kind of people I'm dealing with, what kind of ambience I am in. Like, for example, if you're going into a new workplace, you should develop some awareness of the attitudes of the people around. What is the kind of ambience that I'm going to work in? What are the habits of the people here? What is the nature of these people here? One has to be socially aware and alert. So this kind of awareness is the first way, the first step in dealing with the peer pressure. And next is communication. What is communication? Communication means to talk straight. If some behavior is unacceptable to you, then you have to communicate in straight language that this is what I do not like, this is what I do not want. Plain terms. And secondly, to also set proper boundaries for yourself internally. And then if those set boundaries are not being matched with the external environment, be very clear about expressing your discomfort in crossing the boundaries and retrieve. I'll tell you, there is one very senior devotee, very, very senior counselor in Bombay. What he said is the biggest problem with girls, especially girls, is they do not know how to say no when they have to. This is their biggest problem. So this is why emotional intelligence is so important. Very, very important. One should understand that these emotions can be handled with the help of intelligence. And that intelligence can be honed, polished, and given a higher dimension when it's in touch with spiritual self. That is why spirituality is so important, because it empowers every individual to live a life that is way beyond the mediocre life of being swayed away by emotions and bodily demands. So this is how to deal with peer pressure, by developing awareness and by developing proper communication. Communication should be affirmative, never in a way that okay, I want to please this person, so let me dilute my own value system. That's the biggest no. That's the biggest injustice we are doing to ourselves if our consciousness is ever permitting us to do things which we are not convinced about. Yeah, that is why developing the awareness and communication is important. So we will also see an interesting example from the Shastras, Ramayana continued, as a perfect example of what is perfect emotional intelligence. I was just recently reading this section of Ramayana. I was so inspired. What a perfect behavior at every point of time. What an exemplary nature that has been exhibited by Lord Ram in every interaction of his. It's like I couldn't stop admiring. So that's how I just included that in this section today. So, I mean, if you really want to know what is the perfection of emotional intelligence, read the entire Ramayana and see the dealings of Ram, each and every dealing of Ram with every person he is connected to, be it with Sita or with Lakshmana or with Dashrath Maharaj or with Kaikeyi or with Kaushalya or with Sumantara or with Hanuman or with anybody. Every interaction is so perfect. So this is this episode of Ram's coronation. What happened after Dashrath Maharaj has kind of given in to the demands of Kaikeyi. And so Kaikeyi tells Sumantara to go invite Ram to the palace right now because she wanted to communicate that to him and get the job done as early as possible before Dashrath Maharaj would change his mind. In fact, Dashrath Maharaj was weeping, he was wailing, he was downtrodden, he was shattered into pieces by the demands of Kaikeyi. He begged her by holding her feet. He shouted at her. He expressed his anger. Are you trying to bring the misfortune of Ikshwaku dynasty? Is this how you demand? Do you know what is the consequence of what you have asked for? Can't you retrieve what you have asked? And he even goes down on his knees and begs her, please, at least take back one thing that you have asked. Okay, I will coronate Bharat as a king, but why do you want to banish Ram to the forest? Please take that back at least. He begs her. But Kaikeyi was hell-bent. Can you see the impact of the poisoning by Manthara? Sometimes we also become very hell-bent in our demands, right? With our parents, especially. We want it by all means. But if you go to the root of it, why are we wanting it so much? It's because of some influence somewhere. We just got influenced by it and we just so hell-bent that we want it by all means. And I'm not going to go back on that. So that was how Kaikeyi was hell-bent on what she wanted. So they call upon Sumantara, they're one of their trusted minister. Actually, he comes to greet them in the morning because this whole episode started in the night and next day it was the morning. And so Sumantara comes and to actually, wake up the king. Generally in palaces, in royal palaces, how they wake up the king, the ministers and all of them come and they sing their glories. Oh, king, you're so glorious, etc., etc. You're the glorious heir of the Surya Vamsha. All these things they eulogize. And it was good practice as well, because this is how they respect the king. So they started, Sumantara comes and he starts singing these glories of Dashrath Maharaj. And then Dashrath Maharaj just says, stop it. And Kaikeyi takes this opportunity and tells, just go and invite Ram. He's just little disturbed about many things. So Sumantara goes and he immediately goes to Ram's palace. And as he was going into Ram's palace, there were like people swarming from all over the place. They were just wanting to take one glimpse of Ram. So when he goes to the chambers of Ram, so Ram was sitting on a jeweled throne, dressed in all the royal attire, the very yellow silken garments, and he was resplendent. He was looking so beautiful. So just taking the glimpse of Ram, just filled Sumantara's heart with all ecstasy. but then not forgetting his purpose, he goes and invites him. He says, you were called into the chambers of Queen Kaikeyi and Dashrath Maharaj. So immediately Ram gets up and says that, oh, really? My parents have called me. I will immediately attend to them. So immediately he gets up and he walks out of his room. And the moment he walks out, there was Lakshmana waiting for him to escort him in the chariot to Dashrath Maharaj's chambers. So Lakshman was like unconditionally, he was ever ready and always wanting to serve Ram with the slightest opportunity. Like as Ram walked out, he was like, was looking like a lion that has just walked out of the cave so majestically. So, every movement of Ram was like a celebration to the onlooker. So as Ram moved out, immediately Lakshman, holds an umbrella and with one hand, and with another hand, with the chamar or the whisk, he starts fanning him. And so Ram walks regally towards the chariot, and the chariot comes as if the sun has arisen from the horizon, and it stops at the palace of Ram. So Ram gently mounts onto the chariot and he starts going. And as he was going, so all the people, who were like really waiting like chakora birds to have the glimpse of the lotus face of Lord Ram, they swarmed all around him. And it is said Ram glanced at each and every one of them, and everyone was thinking Ram is glancing only at me. And they felt so satiated just by taking the glance of Ram. So this is how Ram reciprocated with everybody's feelings so deeply and intensely. So as he mounted on the chariot, he saw that so much celebration going on externally in the streets of Ayodhya and internally in the hearts of every Ayodhya-vasi. They were just waiting for that beautiful moment of Ram to be coronated. In fact, they all started chanting all auspicious mantras. Some of the Ayodhya-vasis started saying that may Lord Ram just take even my lifespan and live for thousands of years. And somebody said, like, let all my punya karmas go to Ram and may he just be happy all through his life. So in this way, everybody was just pouring out their blessings and their good wishes and their heartfelt feelings for Ram, in their hearts and in their minds. And Ram was just reciprocating with all of that with his glances. So in this way, so Ram made his way into the chambers of Dashrath Maharaj. So when he went into the chambers of Dashrath Maharaj, here now be attentive. So when he entered into the chambers of Dashrath Maharaj, it was totally a different scene. So the mood outside was totally in contrast with the mood within the chambers, palace of Kaikeyi. There was a silence that was very stern. So immediately as soon as he went in, Ram could sense that there is something really wrong that has happened. Why? Here is social awareness. When Ram looked at Dashrath Maharaj, he was not sitting on the throne in the usual way. He was sitting on the floor. Yeah. And his robe was in a very disheveled way. His hair was disheveled. He was not wearing the crown. So seeing that, Ram was taken aback. He understood there is something really wrong. And he looked at Kaikeyi that very moment. So when he looked at Kaikeyi, he could see in her eyes a flavor of anger and sternness and instability. All these three emotions mixed together. So, Ram being the perfect judge of the situation, he could really understand that there is something really going on wrong here and I have to really attend to that. And at that moment, so Ram actually enters in a very respectful way. He offers the Anjali Mudra. And then he starts speaking to Kaikeyi. He asks Kaikeyi, is everything fine with my father? Is he doing physically well or not? Or is there any turmoil he's going through? Has anything unforeseen happened to Shatrugna or Bharata? Or is there any untowardly thing that has happened? And he says, I know happiness cannot always be accomplished, but as a son, I can do whatever I can to relieve his pain. Please tell me what I should do. Just, I mean, if you see, it is such a disturbing situation, but the way the words that Ram spoke are so gentle, but yet to the point. Yeah, this is the example of being emotionally unperturbed, undisturbed with the situation around, yet speaking the right words. So Kaikeyi, taking advantage of the question that Ram asked, she immediately gets into the scene and she says that we are afraid that your father has to break his word. He has given a word to me, and he's afraid that he will have to go back on his words because of you. And now only you can solve your father's problem, Ram. Now, this is how intelligently she puts words in a way to bring the whole responsibility on Rama. So Rama says, he feels I'm disturbed, not because, I'm expecting something bad, but because you did not trust my loyalty to my father's words. He says, I am known to be Eka Patni and Eka Vachana and Eka Bana. That means I've married only one wife, and when I give one word, I never turn back on it. And when I shoot one arrow, it never misses its target. So ask me whatever, and I will fulfill that desire. Even if it means my self-destruction, I'm going to fulfill your desire. And Kaikeyi says that your father has promised me two boons, that Bharat will be coronated and as a king, and that you will be banished to the forest for 14 years. When she said that, there was not even a trace of change in the expression of Lord Ram. He was just the same how he was before. He said, you could have told this to me. I would rejoice in the happiness of Bharata as much as he would rejoice his own happiness. Yeah, and me going to the forest, I was looking forward to an opportunity to learn from all the saints and sages. And this would be such a glorious opportunity for me. And if this was your desire, you should have instructed me and I would have simply followed it and not involved and paying my father for this. With such absolute perfect composure, Ram speaks these words, not even slightly affected. Imagine he came inside as a king and he would have to walk out as a pauper with, tree barks as his clothes. But he was absolutely undisturbed in the situation. And he perfectly reciprocated with everybody's desires. He told Kaikeyi, what would I want? What should I do? Kaikeyi says, you have to leave immediately because your father will not touch a morsel of grain until you leave Ayodhya. And when she said that, Dashrath Maharaj couldn't contain. He stood up from his pitiful condition and he says, how much more you want to kill a person who is already killed? So, Ram goes and pacifies his father, and not for a long time. He just pacifies him and says, Father, I will have to leave. And he immediately leaves. And when he leaves, and look at this was something that startled me. When he walks out of the palace, all the people who were waiting outside, Ayodhya-vasis, who were looking at Ram, they all started, absorbing themselves in their beauty. And they all were talking to each other, saying that, now Ram looks more beautiful than he was before. Yeah, earlier he was like a lotus bud and now he's like a fully bloomed lotus. And somebody said, look at the eyes of Ram, they are like an ocean. And I'm just diving into them and I'm not able to come out of them. And they all say that he looks more beautiful than how before he entered. What happened inside? So we can only begin to imagine what, for a person who has to go through such a intense emotional turmoil but still being so undisturbed, so much so the onlookers are thinking that, something nice has happened. He's looking more beautiful than before. This is perfect composure of Ram. This is perfect emotional intelligence. Behind actually Ram, when Lakshman and Sumantara come out, Lakshmana was in a fist of fury. He was like, in his eyes were like furious fire coming out as volcanic eruptions by what he has witnessed. He couldn't come out of it. But then just Ram passed through him, like a breeze of, cool air. So Lakshman followed Ram. And when all the Ayodhyawasis saw Lakshmana, then they understood something wrong has happened. When they saw Sumantara, then they understood something wrong has happened. Until then, they didn't have even a glimpse of what could have happened inside. Okay, now, so this is how, and the pastime goes on and on, how Ram has actually interacted with Mother Kaushalya and how he has interacted with others. So this was an example of perfect emotional intelligence, being totally socially aware and undisturbed in the circumstances and reciprocating in the perfect way. So, so this is what we learn. That is why it's so important to read our Puranas, and Itihasas like Ramayana and Mahabharata. Even when we read the Mahabharata, we get the whole background of Gita. If you simply read Gita without an understanding of Mahabharata, one of my teachers has told me, it will simply become a book of philosophy. When we read the Itihasas, we see these principles come alive in the lives of the devotees. Okay, so let's see some current case studies as to what is peer pressure and how people yield to it. So this is an example of a girl. Her name is Sarayu. So this girl, she has developed friendship with another boy and whom she finds very interesting, and they developed some relationship with him. And later on, this girl starts appreciating him, admiring him, and starts, dressing in ways thinking that this will please him, or starts to grab attention of that boy and, tries to make moves. Only to see that the boy purposely avoids her a little because he has some other more important things to do, or he was just merely seeing her as a friend. But somehow this girl has fallen for the boy, and she was trying to do many things to impress this boy. Yeah, Sarayu. So what happens on the day-to-day basis? She sends texts. She texts messages, and she waits for, when is this going to be replied? Yeah, and so whole day, she sends a text and she says, should I reply immediately or should I wait for some more time? Is this the right time, or would I look like a fool? Or no, it's okay, maybe it is too long. And she just waits for that beep, and immediately there's that urge to text. So this is how the whole day she is lost, and how to communicate and how to talk to this boy. But unfortunately, the boy was, he was engrossed his own things, was not interested in her in that way. But this poor girl was behind him, building hopes against hope and trying many ways to impress the boy. So oftentimes there's this psychology of love which says that we tend to be behind people who are not attainable so easily. Yeah. And we tend to neglect those people who come to us on their own. Yeah. Somebody comes behind and, they're like showing all the affection, all the attention. We don't care much for them. And even if we do care, but over a period of time, we tend to show more neglect towards such people. But this, again, the psychology of romance is that, we tend to be behind that person who is more popular, who is more distracted. The funny thing is we want to get attention from those people who do not want to give us attention. Yeah, mind runs behind them. So that's how many a times we deal with relationships in a very foolish way. So if you know why and from where this is all coming, there's a famous saying by this is all coming from A Quest for Real Love. So there's a famous saying by Mandy Hale. The two things will never have to be chased after. What are those two things that never have to be chased after? True friends and true love. So we'll discuss in detail about this in the next session. This is the final session about relationship management, or the secret key to lasting relationships. So this is the famous saying that true friends and true love are things that are never chased after. There's a tendency, sometimes we get into a trap of our own ego, because ego looks for satisfaction in attaining things that are unattainable. Yeah. So, but that's not what real love is. If we are really looking for true love, we should know that we need not chase after that. Yeah. And we also see that. So what is it that makes love, true love, come on its own to us? So this is a great journey in our own lives. That is, one should find one's own purpose. Yeah. Until and unless a person finds one's own purpose, a person will not be able to form meaningful relationships. There's a direct relationship between the two. And it's also said, there's a famous person who's called Will Smith. I don't know if you know of Will Smith. He's a famous Hollywood actor and a great thinker as well. So he to say is that do your work and your own, find your purpose, do your work and work hard. Then your real friends will come to you and they will stay with you. It's not that you go chasing after people, chasing after friends or chasing after love. It will come to you when you are fixed in your own purpose and you're working on it. Yeah. So we can see this in the life of Kaikeyi and Kaushalya. We see the contrast in their two lives. I mean, I'll just quickly stop with this final thing. So if you see Kaikeyi, she's the favorite queen of Dashrath Maharaj. So favorite that Dashrath Maharaj was willing to lay down his life for her. Ramayana explains that, the chambers of Kaikeyi, that Dashrath Maharaj, whenever he was in a good mood, or whenever he wanted comfort or solace or happiness, or he wanted to share his heart or distress, the next, immediately what he would do, he would go to Kaikeyi. She's his favorite queen, and he gave her all the riches, all the happiness, the best palaces and everything. And even Kaikeyi, she used to arrange her whole house, her whole palace with the best of decorations, best of flowers, and she used to make best of the food that was dear to Dashrath Maharaj, and do everything that is dear to the heart of Dashrath Maharaj. And she was such a favorite queen, but in giving her all the attention, he completely neglected Kaushalya and the other queens. And Kaushalya was a neglected queen. So in this way, but what did this attention give Kaikeyi? What did it make her? It all made her so self-centered. And when time came and she was so impacted by Manthara's words, she became so self-centered. She was only thinking of what will bring her happiness. She totally disconnected with the happiness of Dashrath Maharaj. Yeah, this is what happens if we take for granted the love and affection that has been given to us. We can become hard-hearted and self-centered, and are without a purpose. On the other hand, if you see Kaushalya, though she was a neglected queen of Dashrath Maharaj, she made peace with her circumstance. She did not complain. She had a higher purpose in life. Yeah. And that higher purpose was, God consciousness. She worshipped her deity very well. Yeah, and she always prayed for the well-being of Ram. She used to fast, keep so many fasts, serve great saintly persons. And she used to, and also she said, and with all the resources and intelligence that she had, she even opened so many gurukuls and sponsored the education of so many people. She did so much very good social work as well. So she engaged herself in very positive ways and has never complained about the situation. And what was the result? After this whole episode of Rama's banishment happened, Dashrath Maharaj's heart broke. He never looked at the face of Kaikeyi again. He called her all sad words and said, never, I don't want to see you again. And after that, he took shelter of the association of Kaushalya, and he stayed with Kaushalya for the rest of his life. In fact, he left his body also in her presence, never wanting to look back at Kaikeyi again. So this is what we learn from the example of Kaushalya. So she had a purpose, she was fixed in that purpose, and she was executing the purpose without being deterred by situations around. And true love came back to her life again. So the most important aspect is for one to be properly regulated, or one to be properly, to solve the equation of life and to have relationships that are around us in their proper places, in the right flavor. It is important for us to be fixed in our own purpose of life. It makes a lot of difference. Yeah. So that's what even Gita tells us. The final thing, the final verse. One who is resolute in purpose, their intelligence is one. Yeah. Vyavasayatmika buddhi rekeha kurunandana bahushakahi anantasya buddhayo vyavasayinam. So one who is fixed on this path, their intelligence is resolute. They're resolute in purpose. Yeah. Those who are on this path are resolute in purpose, and their aim is one. But the intelligence of those who are not resolute is many branched. So being fixed in our purpose makes us self-satisfied, self-sufficient, and happy with our own self, develop self-love. And that makes us form very positive relationships around us. On the other hand, if we are always the people who are seeking the missing parts of our own life in the relationship with others, this is a very bad strategy to form relationships, that I'm missing something in my life, so I want somebody. Such relationships eventually might start off well, but they never go a long way. If you get into relationships to contribute, because you already are happy and you're wanting to share that happiness with someone that with whom you could connect, that's a very wonderful way to start off a relationship. Such relationships last and they flourish. On the other hand, relationships that are formed based on the conception of I am lacking something in life and I want to get something out of somebody, these relationships are the things which actually meet with so much of pain and frustration over a period of time. We will continue this concept next week. Thank you all very much. If anybody has any queries, questions, I'll take one because it's already late, it's 8:17. Don't drink poison just because you're thirsty. I remember this line. Yes. Yes. In which context you remember this, Disha? Can you explain? Okay. Meanwhile, if anybody has any other queries, any questions, please ask.
Hare Krishna, Mataji, Dandavat Pranam.
Yes, Jyotsna. Yeah, tell me.
Kaikeyi was so pure and she was loving Ram so much. Despite because of Mandara, she was actually deviated from that path. Then what about normal people in Kali Yuga, Mataji? So many people try to cheat us. If Kaikeyi is fallen, then what to talk about all this?
Yeah. So Kaikeyi being, having the association of Lord Ram himself, if she could act like that, what to speak of people in Kali? Yeah, it can be understood from different perspectives. This had to happen as a matter of vidhi, because the whole, Ram's mission was to take place, and so the Daiva factor comes into the play, and so that's the reason this whole thing episode has happened. That's the top view of the whole thing. And what to speak of us in Kali? Yeah, we are very vulnerable people. We are all the more vulnerable. So that is why we have to be more careful. And we should not say this is again Daiva if something has happened to us. It's the superior orchestration. No. That was because, as I said, it's a mission of Lord Ram that has to be accomplished. So, some things, it is vidhi. This is how actually even Lakshman, he actually, at a later point, Ram explains to Lakshmana in the same way. Lakshmana was not convinced of what was happening. He tells that I'm going to, fight back. This is total injustice. This is not fair. When Lakshman was not being convinced about anything, then Lord Ram gives a philosophical perspective to the whole episode. So that this is meant to be. This is the destiny. Yeah, the destiny calls to accomplish a mission. So that's how we are to move from here. That's when Lakshmana, to a degree, becomes pacified. So we cannot compare that way, but certainly there is a lesson to be learned, and that lesson is that we cannot we cannot consider ourselves exception to the external pollution that is happening around us in the way of impact of people who have negative consciousness, or even media. Yeah, media is the super mantra of Kali Yuga. Yeah, one from, we should be really careful about what's entering our ears. That's the lesson from here. Very, very careful. Okay, is that fine?
Yes, Mataji, thank you. And other thing, Mataji, like why Ram's beauty increased so much after that situation?
Why Ram's beauty increased so much after the situation? Yes, the answer to this is because he was happy that he has relieved his father of the burden, Dashrath Maharaj. That's the beauty of Lord Ram. See, he did not see that from a king he has become a pauper, or he did not see that what destiny would await Ayodhya. He did not see how so many people's hearts are going to be shattered. He didn't see all that. He only felt that happiness that I'm able to fulfill the word of my father, and I have relieved my father of the burden of not being keeping up his promise. That was the happiness and solace he felt deep within his heart. That was what mattered to him. That was what brought happiness to his heart. That's why he was more beautiful.
Thank you so much, Mataji.
Yes, so that was the beauty of Lord Ram. Yes, somebody wrote a question here from Shravya. You said that it's not good decision when we don't consider our opinions and feelings only to make others happy, even though we are uncomfortable with those decisions. Mataji, if we know that it's for good only, or it's dharmic, but we cannot tolerate or something, how can we handle those situations? That's your question is, when we don't consider our opinions, you mean to say that I didn't get your question, Shravya. Can you speak it out?
Mataji, like when we hear some decisions are taken, but we cannot tolerate those, but sometimes we sacrifice our own situations to make them happy. Like even though we know it's good, but we cannot tolerate or something. So
Okay. So if the person is well-wisher of yours and what they're telling you is something genuine and it is better than your own choice, then there's nothing wrong in abiding by that. So you have to look into the person who is advising you. When I was telling about only to make others happy, to dilute our sense of value system, this exactly happens at a workplace or in a scenario of a college, where there are instances where some girls accept to the proposal of a boy just to see him happy, not considering whether this accepting this proposal would be good for me in my life. I told this in that particular context. Just to see the happiness in that, it came in many movies also. Just to see the happiness in the other boy's face, you say yes to the proposal, not considering whether I am really interested in this boy or not. So that kind of foolishness is to be avoided. Yeah, but so to be flexible with our own opinions, especially when we are listening to the good advice of our well-wishers and our elders, it is a very good quality. Yeah, these two should not be confused. And to please them, of course, you see the example of Lord Ram, to please his father, to abide by the word of his father, to what extent he went. He even says that I can take any amount of self-destruction just to ensure that my father's words are carried out. Yeah. So it's this is what is social awareness of the person, relationships we are dealing with. With every relationship, we have a different flavor, different responsibility to take care, and different levels of interaction. Yeah. My spiritual master once said, to accurately learn how to deal in relationships, it takes a lifetime, but it's worth it. Yes. Okay, I hope that answered you, Shravya. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Disha asks, Mataji, some parents force their children to take a career of their wish, not considering the child's opinion. Now, what should the child do? If it's the beginning of the career, that is, if you're in your 10th standard, what are you studying, Disha? You're an engineering graduate, or? This is the question that's most often asked. So it depends on which standard you're in. Kanishka also raises her hand. You're doing her MBA. Okay. So you've come quite far because there's no point discussing about this right now. But as such, it's a very, very important question. I will give a general answer to this. So career has to be chosen as per one's psychophysical nature, one's propensities, one's likings, one's interests, one's core potential, one's talent, and what one is convinced about after doing adequate amount of research and being convinced about. You need to take a good guidance, good counseling, and you should take the responsibility for it. This is the ideal way of choosing a career. Essentially, actually, the Gurukulas of the past were in such a way that there used to be a single teacher who knew the ins and out of the student. And by the time the student is graduating out of school, the teacher very well knew what this person would shine forth in. And that would be given to him as a skill. Yeah. Or her as a skill, or as a roadmap for the rest of the life. But right now, such training is not very much present, but still a person can undergo on a practical basis. A person can take career counseling from experts. There are career counselors, have an aptitude test, and understand what are your interests. There are some ways, actually, maybe if you, but as I said, right now, because you're in your MBA, there's nothing much that can be done now. But if you're at the beginning of your career, like, in your 10th standard, or where your decision has to be made in which line to go, you can, there are very nice and interesting inventories or self-assessments taking help of which you can have a good projection of what you will shine forth in. So consulting with a good career counselor will really help. Also take the inputs from your own parents. Certainly the inputs can be taken as to what their desire is or what their experience speaks. And also you can look into the world around you as to what inspires you, which line inspires you. Is it the medical profession that inspires you? Is it the engineering profession that inspires you? What is your desire to be in future? So these three things should be matched. Essentially three things should be taken into consideration: your interests, your abilities, and monetary benefits. These three things have to be considered while choosing the career: personal interests, your abilities, and monetary benefits. And choose a career that will bring forth all the three, if it is possible. So right now, because you're in the MBA line, you can, this is probably a one-to-one discussion. You can get back to me. I will answer you personally. Yeah, Kanishka. Yes, Kanishka. Please, what's your question?
Hare Krishna, Mataji, Dandak Pranam.
Hare Krishna, Kanishka. Very happy that you have joined our Gita Magic group. Yes, tell me.
Mataji, you told that relationships won't last when we lack something in ourselves and we go and search for someone else. So, like we decide for Senior Devotees Association because we lack what they have. Like they have more knowledge about Krishna, they have more praying for Krishna. So won't that relationships last forever, Mataji?
Oh, no. Definitely they will last. Why not? See, it's what I spoke was in terms of people getting into relationships, especially marriages, when they feel that I do not have this particular thing within myself and I marry and my life becomes complete. This is a basic attitude people get into relationships with. So, but what you spoke is on a spiritual platform. On a spiritual platform, we are always eternal beggars. We are never accomplished. There is no perfection. We should be in the mood of begging only. When you go to Vaishnavas, we have to go with a begging bowl. Please give me mercy. Please give me Krishna. I don't have. Krishna himself is begging Radharani for love. What to speak of people like us? So we should always be in the mood of a beggar when we are with devotees, when you're associating with devotees, and know that we have nothing. And whatever the Vaishnavas or the Guru gives us out of their mercy, we pick it up with gratitude and be eternally grateful for it. That's the mood. Yeah, there's this beautiful Vaishnava bhajan, na? Krishna se tomara, Krishna dite paro, tomari shakati ache. Amito Kangala, Krishna Krishna boli, dhaitava pachi pachi. There's Amito Kangala. I am, a pauper. I don't have anything. I just come behind you as a beggar. This is the song a sadhaka sings for the grace of the spiritual master. So one should be always in the mood of a beggar when it comes to Vaishnava dealings.
Thank you, Mataji.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you all very much. So it was very nice discussing with all of you and sharing whatever little I know. We'll have the final session next week. Thank you all. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.